This is the new Tesla Model 3. It's just had a facelift, there's loads of new changes, and we're going to tell you all about them now. But before we start, make sure you're subscribed to our channel because we've got loads of new car reviews coming out every week. And if you want to save money off your next new car, make sure you go to whatcar.com. So while over-the-air updates mean that the Model 3's had pretty regular technical upgrades since its European launch in 2019, in fact it's had more than 20 of those updates, this is the first time that there's been any physical changes to the car. So the main thing that you're going to notice on the outside is this trim around the window line here, where it used to be chrome but now it's satin black. The same for the flush door handles, and also for this bit up front where the cameras are. There's also said to be more efficient tyres fitted to every Model 3 across the range with lower rolling resistance. If you go for 18 or 19-inch sport alloys, then you get this slightly different design like the 19s that we've got here. Go for a Model 3 Performance and you can now also get 20-inch Uber turbine wheels. The boot now has a power-assisted tailgate, so it means you can remotely lift it all the way up via your phone, the touchscreen, or just the button itself, and it'll do all the hard work for you. You'll also be able to see some holes put into the piping down here, which means that on rainy days like this, the water just drains away a bit better than it did before, where you did have a slight risk of the water accumulating there and then drowning whatever was in the boot. Away from the boot, there's also new dual layer acoustic glass, which should make it quieter inside. One thing that hasn't changed is the slightly iffy panel gaps that you can get in quite a lot of Teslas. It seems to be fairly inconsistent, so we've had some press cars that are okay and others that aren't quite so good, like this one, especially with the shut lines on the boot back here and there. There are some pretty big physical changes inside, including new scroll wheels on the steering wheel. There's also a so-called graphite finish to the seat controls here, although they do still feel a little bit cheap and plasticky. While we're here, I'll also point out the sill plates, which are now black to match the exterior. The sun visors are also a little bit different. Now, we're used to the slightly odd magnetic flappy thing that covers the mirror, but what's new is that there's a magnetic strip in it, which means when you close it, it will snap into place just like that. But the biggest change inside is this center console. Now, you'll remember from the previous Model 3, it had this piano black glossy finish to it, which would get loads of fingerprints on it. And a lot of Tesla owners were quite annoyed at that, and they'd actually wrap the center console in something to stop that from happening. So now for this facelift, Tesla has completely redesigned this center console. So they've gone out with the piano black glossy finish and in with some of these plastics and synthetic leather. Now, that might sound like a recipe for disaster, but let's cover exactly what's new. At the back, you've still got a central armrest with loads of space underneath it. In front of that, the cup holders have lost that chrome outline from before. And here, you used to have a lid that would flip up, but instead they've swapped it for this sliding plastic lid instead. And it actually feels pretty good quality. It's not really flimsy and thin. But the best thing is, underneath it, you've still got absolutely loads of storage space here. So it's really practical from a storage perspective. And then at the top, where you used to have another flippy lid thing where you could put your smartphone underneath it, plug it into a USB and then just leave it there. Instead of that, they filled it in. And on the top, you can leave two smartphones, which are both able to wirelessly charge. You might also remember there used to be a couple of USB ports under that flip lid thing in the center console, and you could plug in an external hard drive, and that would be where you can record the Sentry mode footage from the Model 3. If you're wondering where you can do that now, there's a USB in the glove box itself, and also there was a recent software update that means you can put a PIN code with that glove box to lock it. And there are still a couple of USB ports in the center console itself, but now they're USB-C. Now, probably the most significant thing to point out in the new Model 3 is in the front trunk, because you might notice it's a little bit smaller than it was before. Not much, and it's still a really good, usable size that's bigger than lots of other electric cars with front trunks. But the reason it's smaller is because the new facelifted Model 3 has a heat pump like the Model Y. And effectively what that does is it's a more efficient way of heating the interior of the car that requires less energy from the battery. So if you're in cold conditions and you're driving and you're heating the interior of the car, then this facelifted Model 3 should have a longer electric range than the pre-facelift Model 3 in the same conditions. You also now can travel further from a full charge in every version of the Model 3, which is great because it wasn't like they couldn't go far before. You know, we were talking about electric cars with some of the longest ranges on the market. But with EVs, every mile counts. So being able to add a little bit more on top of what was already being offered is very good indeed. And it's good to know that on a cold day like this, I can heat the interior, and it's up to 3 times more efficient to do so than it was pre-facelift. As for the other changes and what impact they have, well, the double glazing, it probably is a little bit quieter in here, but it's not a huge difference, really. This is still a fairly loud car, quite a lot of road roar and wind noise, as there is in a lot of other electric cars as well. But it's the center console that's going to be the main talking point of this change, cosmetically at least. And really, it does lift the interior quality a little bit, because the piano black finish from before, it would get really messy very quickly, and also the lids felt a bit flimsy. So now actually it feels really solid. The matte plastic doesn't feel cheap at all. It's all got a nice solid action to it, and it's all screwed well together. So it does slightly lift interior quality, but it's not night and day. Now, this isn't part of the facelift, but something useful that's been updated in the Model 3 recently and is worth pointing out are these side repeater cameras. Now, you get your reversing camera, you've always been able to have that, but now you effectively have a view of your blind spot. And it's really useful. You can set it so that when you're on the motorway, when you indicate, it gives you that view and effectively becomes a blind spot monitoring system, although not officially a blind spot monitoring system. And it's useful to have, although you can see that actually my camera on the right isn't working at the minute. Fair enough. We'll give it the benefit of the doubt. Hopefully a system reboot back at HQ will sort that out. And it's also annoying that there isn't a 360-degree view camera on offer, because lots of new cars, lots of new EVs offer that as standard. And Tesla, with all of its cameras for autopilot, it's a shame that it doesn't have any of them set up properly to be able to offer that. It's not a deal breaker, but it would just be nice if they could offer it in the future. But there aren't really any other mechanical updates to bring you. This remains very similar to before, and that definitely isn't a bad thing, because the Model 3 is a really brilliant car to drive and a brilliant electric car to live with as well, because of its range, and also crucially because of its fantastic supercharger network. Yes, amazing charging speeds on offer from a widely available and brilliantly maintained network is way ahead of what non-Tesla EV owners have to make do with right now. Just bear in mind though that the claimed ranges for the Model 3 are unlikely to be reached in genuine real-world driving conditions, although I'm sure plenty of Tesla fans will be suggesting otherwise in the comments. It remains the case that the Standard Range Plus isn't the best version of the Model 3, that's still the range-topping performance version. But then if you think this is about £16,000 cheaper than the performance, so really, you're still getting a very good car if you go for this entry-level model. It's not quite as quick as the performance, but when you put your foot down, if you just come out of a BMW 320d, then the acceleration is still massively quick. But sure, the range-topping performance model is way more capable than the Standard Range Plus, so it's definitely worth the extra. No matter what version you go for though, it's pretty comfortable by electric car standards. Although it remains the case that cars like the Audi A4 and the best versions of the BMW 3 Series are more comfortable overall. So really, the facelift hasn't completely revolutionised the Model 3, but it totally didn't need it. It's a really brilliant electric car. These little changes here and there improve things even more and give it a slightly different cosmetic look to before, which some people might prefer. So really, it remains one of the very, very best electric cars out there. If you are looking to buy an electric car, but you are not quite ready to stretch your budget to Model 3 territory, then you might be interested in our Renault Zoe versus Peugeot E208 electric car twin test, which are two really great small electric cars that cost less than a Model 3. If you're interested in watching that, click on the link at the top of the screen. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel as well, because we've got loads of other video reviews just like that going live all the time. And if you are interested in buying any car whatsoever, if you want to get a great deal straight away, no haggling, all on your phone or on your computer, go to whatcar.com.
you.